Okay, good evening. We're calling to order this meeting of the Board of Directors of the Montara Water and Sanitary District. It is November 6, 2014, and the time is 7:40 p.m. Could we have a roll call, please?
Dr. Slater-Carter.
Present.
Dr. Harvey.
Here.
Dr. Boyd.
Here.
Dr. Huber.
Here.
All right. One of our directors is hopefully enjoying a little well-deserved time off on vacation. Let's see. Don't really have any president statement tonight, other than to congratulate the COSI for surviving another epic act of democracy, of doing peaceful elections, and elections come with a lot of contention and a lot of change sometimes, and yet we always seem to get through it and continue to operate as a civilized society, and it's a real pleasure to be here on the COSI, especially with so many people who are so passionate about trying to contribute to their communities. So, with that, we have a public hearing. Item number 1, review and possible action concerning biannual update of conflict of interest code.
Well, I had an oral comment.
Oh, oral comments for items not on the agenda. Let's back up to that.
Thank
Catherine?
you. I was told by Clement, and he can probably fill in after me, that we have started with building the Alta Vista tank.
Yes, so
which is really big news. And that's why I wanted at the beginning of the meeting.
okay. Well, thank you very much, Catherine, for this comment. Yes, it's big news, and we actually released a press release today about this. So at the last meeting, this board actually approved the contract with the lowest responsible bidder, and the firm Western Water actually was very fast on jumping on the project, and started, quite frankly, with setup and everything almost 2 weeks ago. So we had to prepare things very fast on our end. It was a long time waiting for anything to happen, and all of a sudden things are moving very fast. So this tank is construction has begun, and we're scheduled to see a new tank in operation in December 2015. So this is a project that is going to take some time, but it's well underway, and very excited to see the progress. I also think that at a certain point we should all do a walkthrough of the site. I'm trying to organize something like that for the directors and other interested parties very soon. I think it's probably good to do this at the beginning and then in a later phase as well. One of the phases that I think is very interesting to watch is actually, this is going to be a pre-stressed concrete tank, and the actual process of the pre-stressing is very interesting. It's a wire wrapping done with a machine that.
So they pre-stress it on site.
They pre-stress it on site, yes, and it's very impressive, and I think that would be a very good opportunity to check in up there for everyone. But we try to get something organized very soon. So that there's a walkthrough and everybody can take a look at how we start out.
Sounds good. Well, congratulations to everyone. This is something we've been looking forward to for a long time, and we'll look forward to the progress on this. I'm hoping that we're taking pictures as we go, so we can.
Yes.
Video.
I was thinking time lapse. Just the whole thing come up. Okay, any other comments for items other than
Maybe
those on
we
the
need
agenda?
a drone so we can observe this.
Okay, any other comments for items not on the agenda?
Well, maybe one other comment that is not on the agenda that I think was fairly interesting, that the State Water Resources Control Board published a database yesterday that showed per capita consumption throughout the state. And of course, I was very curious to see how we're doing, since I participated in all their drought surveys. Well, it turns out that we were not on the list, and now that I have been able to talk to the state board directly, to one of their representatives in charge for the database, was actually a fairly interesting conversation, because only urban water suppliers are listed, are supposed to be listed. That means water suppliers that have more than 3,000 connections, and I think there's a certain acre foot production limit. However, there is a number of smaller suppliers listed anyways, and so he was very excited that I was the first water system to call to complain that we're not on the list, because everybody's been calling to complain that they are on the list. So, I was also curious about the low consumption rates, because we've previously stated here that we believe that we have the lowest per capita consumption in the state, and our consumption is around 60 gallons per minute per capita,
Per person per day?
per person per day.
Right.
And so we looked at this thoroughly, and we looked at prior per capita consumptions all throughout the Bay Area and throughout the state, and weren't able to locate a district that has a lower per capita consumption. And when I asked this question, why these consumption rates are all of a sudden coming back in the 50s for some agencies, answer was essentially that the data that is submitted is left unchecked. And while there is probably a very small margin of error when it comes to the production data, water suppliers have meters, they know how to deal with water. Big errors occur with the estimation of how much percent is actually domestic water use and how much is commercial water use.
Mm-hmm.
And also the simple population numbers are very unreliable for some agencies. You know, some can simply utilize census data, others have overlapping boundaries, and it gets much more complicated. So essentially, he admitted that there's a huge margin of error in this, and this is more or less a guideline and a tool to check for water utilities to check themselves how they perform. But I think these numbers are not to be taken too serious. That's what it comes down to. So I still think we're doing very well, and we know that the 60 that we're the numbers that we produce are very accurate.
Okay, let's move on to the item for the public hearing that we just read, the review and possible action concerning biannual updated conflict of interest code.
So it's the Political Reform Act that requires every local government agency to review the conflict of interest code every 2 years. That is to be done by September 1. We submitted a notice indicating that an amendment is necessary. So what we need to do is we need to pass a new conflict of interest code, an amended code, and submit that then to the San Mateo County. The amendment that is required for the district is actually a change in positions. We added an operations manager position in I think it was 2012. And so this position now has been added to the conflict of interest code. Public hearing was required to adopt the revised conflict of interest code, so we published the required notices twice in the local newspaper. And so the recommendation is to open the public hearing, allow for relevant testimony, and adopt the resolution amending conflict of interest code of the Montara Water and Sanitary District.
Okay, let's open the public hearing. Do we have any member of the public who wishes to comment or add testimony? Seeing none, can I have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Catherine, Jim, to close. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. That is 4-0. We close the public hearing. Board members, any comments, questions?
I think conflict of interest having a code is very important.
So I would just like to summarize for the public what our code states. There are 7 different categories of designated positions that are affected by the code. Anyone who is a member of any of these 7 categories is covered by one or more of the categories of possible conflict, and then there's a requirement for each of those 4 categories. So the 7 designated positions are directors, candidates for office of director, treasurer, general manager, operations manager, that's the new thing tonight, superintendent of water operations, and consultants. Now, candidates and consultants have a paragraph each. The investment manager, being the district treasurer, has another one. And then the 4 categories cover investments in a business entity that might be affected by something this board does, or that the agency does. Category 2 is interest in any real property that could be impacted by what this agency does. Category 3, sources of income that could be foreseeably affected. And category 4 is any business entity which the designated official or employee is a director, officer, partner, trustee, employee, or holds any position of management that might be affected. So those are the kind of categories enumerated. So for the 7 designated positions, all 7 of these positions are affected by all 4 of these categories. So everyone is uniformly required to disclose any of these categories that might come into conflict. That's so the public can know, if you're going to decide on something, we at least know where your interests lie, and then depending on the nature of what we're looking at, talking about, and the nature of the interest, that might dictate whether or not, say, a board member can participate in a decision. Or it might just be a matter of letting everybody know that the board member is affected by that. And it applies to pretty much, it applies to these 7 positions. So not every employee here is affected the same way, but Clemens, for example, and our council and our board members are all subject to these. So that's the nature of it. And know that every agency has one of these conflict of interest codes that they've adopted. Some are this thorough and some are less thorough. Some make some exceptions based on the nature of the designated positions that are listed. And it's something good to know about the way your public servants work and the kind of constraints that are on them, because the public deserves to know that its business is being conducted fairly and in an open manner. So this is, with this and the Brown Act and the Public Records Act and a few other things, this is part of how the community can keep an eye on things and make sure it's all on the up and up. Okay, we have a resolution. The recommendation is to adopt the resolution. Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. This is a resolution. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Slater Carter,
Aye.
Director Harvey,
Aye.
Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Huber.
Aye.
All right, the motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Next up, we have the consent agenda. Do any directors have any items they wish to pull for separate consideration? Hearing none, can I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So
The-
moved. Okay,
Second.
good, Catherine.
Okay, so this is the Jim and Catherine. On the consent agenda, the minutes, the financial statements, the warrants, which the checks, the Sewer Authority Midcoast side flow report, the monthly review of the investment portfolio, connection permit applications received, the monthly water production report, the rain report, and the solar energy report. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have to do a roll call, don't we, because Dwight's not here.
No, this is for the consent agenda, we're okay, and we
Okay.
have a quorum, so we're good to go. So the motion carries 4-0, but thank you for
Yep.
just catch me on anything else. Appreciate it. All right, we have no old business. New business, item 1, review and possible action concerning the receipt of audit for fiscal year 2013-2014.
Scott, we had a request that Chris could
Oh,
come before
indeed.
that.
If no one objects, can we move the item 2, the review and possible action concerning Prop 218 notice to increase the 2015 solid waste disposal fees by 1.77%? And hear that one first, because the audit might take a little bit, and Chris has to get to another meeting. If that's okay with everybody, let's move on to that item, and we'll come back to item 1.
Okay, so in 2013, we negotiated a new contract with increased services. It was the same weekly pickup that we had before of refuse and recycling, bi-weekly green waste service, but service now also includes standardized containers and single-stream recycling, and some other minor changes to some services. So the franchise agreement with Recology of the Coast requires the district to annually increase the solid waste disposal rates by January 1 in accordance with a formula that's in the agreement. And according to this formula, Recology of the Coast provided calculations for a required rate increase and the necessary background information. So the formula results in a 1.77% rate increase for residential rates effective January 1, 2015. So what we are asking the board tonight is to authorize the mailing of the attached Prop 218 notice that will be mailed to all property owners and customers in Montara and Moss Beach, notifying them about the planned rate increase for January 1. We then schedule a public hearing for the January 15, 2015 meeting, at which all protests will be formally counted to determine whether or not the proposed rate limits should be approved. So again, tonight we're asking for the distribution of the Prop 218 notice that essentially raises the solid waste disposal fees by 1.77%. So the 32-gallon cart, for example, currently costs $19.57, and that would go up to $19.91. And I think it's worth noting that we still have at least one of the lowest, if not the lowest, solid waste fees on the peninsula, I believe. Is that right? Okay, that's...
I don't see any speaker slips. Board, do you have any comments or questions?
It doesn't really relate to the rate increase, but I think those new cars are just the neatest thing in the world. That they're easy to use, and also we have had no trouble with raccoons being able to get them open. So we do put a spring clamp on them, but it's a welcome improvement.
I think we negotiated a good contract, and I'm pleased with the way the formula has worked out. I would note that under this formula, it must be close to what the government's using, because that's about the same percentage increase that Social Security is going to be getting. And I think you've been running your business as the general manager of Recology of the Coast in a very efficient manner. Chris and I recently had a conversation, and she was telling me that they have very, very little overtime, that you have your accident rate is the lowest of Recology's, and I was very impressed, because those all work towards keeping our rates down, and I appreciate that.
All right. Well, what we need is an authorization for the manager to distribute the notice. Do you need a vote? Or
Now, is Recology going to pay for this notice? Yes.
Yes, they're actually paying for this. Yeah.
Okay.
Can we sneak another one in? Do we need any other rate increases? Darn.
Can I have a motion to authorize the general manager to distribute the notice?
So moved.
I second.
Okay, so Catherine and Jim, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 4-0. See, when I can count 4, I don't ask about the nays. I could give you, if anybody wants a second chance, call it. So the motion carries. All right, let's go back to item 1, review and possible action concerning receipt of audit for fiscal year 2013-2014.
So we received the audit that was prepared by Vavrnik, Trine, and Day. That is for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2014. I want to note that this is the first time that we have received the audit so early in the year. Actually, we actually received the audit in the next calendar year so far, and I think that is partially due to our accountant, who has been doing a very good job in preparing everything, and of course also VTD got in here very early and in time. So thank you for preparing it in a very fast timeline. So the Finance Committee reviewed the audit on October 30. And we had a couple of questions that we received from the Finance Committee, so we prepared a note sheet that explained some of the questions, and it has been distributed at this meeting right now.
And that's in addition to the note sheets that came with
That's-
the audit, and it's separate from.
Yes, it's in addition, and its purpose is to essentially be prepared for questions that might come tonight, or essentially those questions were asked at the Finance Committee meeting, and so you can see a little bit how the Finance Committee meeting went and what questions were asked and what our answers are. And I'm certain we're going to get into some of those, but I'd like to actually ask Peter Medina with Mays to present the audit document. What we should do after the review of the audit is that the board should acknowledge receipt and file with, we should file the audit with County, State, Standard & Poor's, iBank, and First Republic. So the recommendation is going to be acknowledge receipt of the annual audit for the period ending June 30, 2014. Direct the general manager to send a copy to the County of San Mateo, State Controller, Standard & Poor's, post on the district webpage, and to make copies on file available to the public. And Peter, if I may ask you to maybe just start, yes, go up to the mic and start present. And we also have a representative of VTD present for any questions.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, well, the district is required by law to go through the audit process on a yearly basis. It is a snapshot of the activities at June 30, 2014. Management is responsible for preparing the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. All the disclosures and such are our responsibility. VTD comes in with their audit team and performs the audit. The process begins in, I believe, late May, June, during the interim process, where they do a test of controls, ask management questions. The gals up front are asked questions just about the processes and controls that are in place. They come back in August to do a full substantive test, and that's when they fully come over the books after they have been closed by myself and Clemens and the ladies up front. And at which point they're free to make any adjustments or make any recommendations as to the proper presentation of the financial statements. We received a management letter as well as a financial statements. The management letter, as being a former auditor, is really what I pay close attention to, because it is the auditor's chance to talk about any issues that may have arose during the audit, any difficulties they may have incurred, or really just a matter of them voicing any and everything that they choose to bring up. I'm happy to say that we didn't have any issues, no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, which are, when those get noted, it's never a good thing. And our audit opinion was once again clean for the year, for the fiscal year ended, and no audit adjustments were noted by the auditors. That's it.
Okay. We have a speaker set from Bill Kehoe. Bill?
Thank you, Mr. President. Bill Keogh, Morse Beach. I just want to say I was really happy to see this. I'll admit I only cursorily glanced it over, but as my memory serves me, about a year ago, with the contention through that summer of the whole budget and audit and all the accusations made and some of the heat with the previous board, I think that, this audit sort of holds out what I think, at least I feel, and I think a lot of the residents of Moss Beach and Montara feel, is that you guys are doing a great job. And so keep it up, and you'll always have our support if you do. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Board members, discussion or questions?
I'll wait until after, Chairman.
No, I have nothing.
Clerk, committee, care to
Yeah.
share any thoughts with us?
Well, I think we went over a number of things, most of which we sort of internally got answered. That the detail sheet that Clemens prepared went a long way towards that. We also talked about on page 9, there's a line that says investment in the Joint Powers Authority's capacity rights of $2,067,547. That the question was, is this really a capital asset? And I would just like to get a little bit of clarification and have that discussed just briefly. The other thing is that came up on page 9, there was a line that says a deferred charge on refunding for $261,798. And on that one, I don't quite understand that, and I'd just like a little better explanation.
Say the page again?
Page 9.
It's the bottom, next to bottom item.
Okay.
And that's the extent of the questions I have.
Okay, we have, all right.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Ahmed Wawi, I'm the audit manager, assigned to service the
I'm sorry, I
district's-
didn't catch your name.
Ahmed Wawi.
Thank you.
So to answer your question, your first question, I'll defer the second question to Peter. So what you see there is that's the accumulation of payments and other capital expenditures that the district have made over the years for the capacity rights to SAM. It's better described as capacity rights rather than investment. It's not truly an investment as the accounting standards define the investment. This has been something that previous management prior to even Clemens coming on board has chosen to refer to as investment, and they have been, it's management's financial statements, and they have been passing on, reclassifying that, if you will. To us, from an audit perspective, it's an asset. It's what we call an intangible asset because it's related to an infrastructure. It's not an asset that you amortize or depreciate. So it sits on your balance sheet or on your statement of net position. The question is, you could make an argument that it's a capital asset. In fact, the accounting standards, it does not meet the definition of a capital asset because Montara's capacity rights do not meet an equity investment in SAM. It has to be an equity investment in SAM in order for it to be classified as an asset. And this is the agreement with SAM does not specify whether on dissolution, if SAM was to go away, how would the net assets of SAM would be distributed. Again, one could make an argument, and I can certainly respect that it could be a capital asset because on dissolution, Montara potentially will get some of SAM's net position. So, not sure if I answered your question to your satisfaction.
Well, let me interject with one thing. At the very beginning, you said it's payments that this district did towards capacity rights.
Correct.
And I think what it actually is, it is really literally capital
Expenditures.
capital expenditures. So,
Correct.
for example, money that we paid towards the weather project.
Correct.
So it's simple capital project monies that this district pays.
Exactly, Clemens. Great point there. As a matter of fact, if this point was to be revisited next year, it would be our recommendation that this balance be reclassified as an intangible asset, and it would be listed under capital assets as an undepreciable or unamortizable asset, as instead of it sitting as an investment.
Where something has gone directly into the construction of capital equipment, that should be depreciating though, shouldn't it?
No, actually not. It's because it's related to an infrastructure asset. It has an infinite life. It does not get depreciated.
Now, essentially, it's Sam who
I'd love for
depreciates
that to be
it. Is
true,
that
but-
correct?
Sam takes a depreciation, not
Sam
us.
takes a depreciation.
Sam, yes. So you don't record any portion of Sam's assets.
I see.
We're talking. I'm sorry. I must
Okay,
have
no, I
misunderstood the
understand.
question.
So
Yeah.
it's a matter of how we classify it. It doesn't actually change the nature of what it is. It's just a matter of
Presentation.
trying to be consistent with accounting principles, trying to
Yes.
find the right place on on this net position statement.
Correct.
Where-
Yeah. Correct. That is correct.
Ahmed, is there, having classified this basically, let's say, as an intangible asset, is there any practical implication of that classification?
I'm not sure what you mean by practical implications.
For instance, like, as an intangible, that it doesn't mean that we can, that at some point we could potentially sell that, or if there's a dissolution, that does classifying it one way or the other give us more rights, less rights?
No. From legal perspective, I wouldn't comment on that. But from an accounting perspective, their capital assets are their capital assets. So you don't have, at least not per the agreement that
I think, so what I'm hearing you say is that you're drawing your guidance from the JPA, the Joint Powers Agreement itself,
Correct.
to help guide you in determining what the classification for this is. So to Bill's question, the JPA itself would be the guidance that
Okay.
had to do with, and let's be really clear, we're not sitting here anticipating dissolution of the JPA, but as an auditor, this is your responsibility to think about these questions and use that to determine where, which road to put these items in.
Correct, and we have specific guidance on that particular topic. The percentage upon dissolution has to be very specific and precise for it to become an equity investment. And if it became an equity investment, then you can say, well, yes, I want to recognize a capital asset as an ownership in SAM of that particular amount.
I mean,
However, as it stands, it does not meet that.
certainly in the colloquial, we certainly own 20% of SAM and don't intend to change our viewpoint on, we're a 20% owner of this JPA and have all sorts of attendant rights with that. But the dissolution of the whole thing and, selling off and having the garage sale is not, we can't do that. We have to collect and convey and treat and discharge the wastewater. So it's an ongoing thing. So, but certainly we have an owner interest in it. So I'm glad you asked the question about the classification because it's something that would seem to tell a story in one way, but it doesn't really change the nature of things.
And I think it's very important to know this as a SAM representative because, for example, we just had redistribution of capital funds planned in past years from SAM, or sometimes we have a transitioning of operations funds into capital monies on the SAM side, and those things are interfering with this process on our end, essentially. So I think it's something to remember when you SAM representatives are discussing how money is transferred or what money is used for capital improvements.
All right. Do we have any other questions, comments, Catherine?
Well, there was another
Oh, I'm
question.
sorry, Bill.
Yeah, there was that question about deferred charge on refunding. Just, Peter, are
And
you?
it's a water,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that $261,000. This occurred in 2012 when the original 2003 Go bonds were refinanced in such terms. Part of that transaction created an asset, and which was chosen to be amortized over the continued life of the bonds. So forever long these bond proceeds are paid off is how long this asset will be on the books. In the past, this was actually a new GASB in the current year, I believe it to be 65, that it had to be displayed, because typically all in the past year, since it was first booked that way, it would net directly against the bonds, and so you wouldn't even see this amount. It would just be, we would show one number as the GO bonds balance, and that would be a part of it. In this, because of this current GASB, that amount had to be broken out. So that is just, like I said, when the financial transaction was booked, this is part of that transaction.
So there's no decision related to this. This is basically an accounting entry, and it really just reflects something happened as part of the refinancing of the
Correct.
loan. Okay.
Do you have other questions, Bill?
Let me just check my notes. No, I think that's it.
Okay, Catherine?
no, thank you. See that I had notes, but, one of the things that came out of the committee meeting that, we would like for next year to be worked on is just a master list of what our assets are, and that came out of the question about SAM and whether how we would list our 20% of SAM. It seems to me that should be included somewhere in our balance sheets, but so that was one of the things we were going to be looking at. And I want to thank Clemens for the notes, the clarification notes. I'd like for us to continue to do that because it makes our finances more accessible to the common person who might have questions, and that's one of the things this district stands on is our transparency and our openness to questions from our community, from our stockholders, so to speak. Other than that, one of the things that I think I would like to see, again, for next year, and it has to do with transparency for our public. You have to go through these numbers and you don't get a sense of what percentage of our expenses are on wages and benefits. And I think when we're doing rate increases, it's important to be able to explain to our ratepayers exactly where their money is going. And I'd like it to be something very simple and something they can just look at and see, because I know our ratepayers support our crew, they support our participation in a lot of things, and so it's important for them to see where their money's going in a quick, easy fashion. So it doesn't need to be, it shouldn't be part of the audit, but I think it does need to be easily available information. Other than that, this has been a very, how can I call an audit pleasant, but it was efficient and well done, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Do we have any other comments or questions? If we don't, can we have a motion to acknowledge receipt of the annual audit?
I like the motion.
And the motion, as I understand it, also directs the general manager to send a copy to the county of San Mateo, the state controller, standard reports, posted on the district webpage, and make copies on file available to the public.
I
Is that correct understanding?
I second the motion.
Okay, so Bill with the motion, Jim with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nays, motion carries 4-0. I'd like to thank our auditors, thank our committee, Clemens. This kind of thing doesn't come together this way without a lot of hard work from you and staff.
And Judy and Joanne.
So Judy and Joanne, it's nice to see it come together and be such a perfunctory matter. It shows a lot of good homework having gone into it to make it so. Thank you. Let's move on to item 3, review and possible action concerning the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side guidelines for recycled water. If I could just jump ahead on this one. We just this afternoon received the draft, and Clemens has circulated it to the board. We've not had sufficient time to review it, and there's no terrible hurry rush to go ahead and try to hear it tonight. So
Thank you.
let's take this up at the next meeting if everyone's okay with
I
that.
appreciate that.
We are at a good point at SAM in this. Just as a reminder to the public, or if this is the first time you're tuning in, the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side Board has a committee that has been working with certain other stakeholders, including the owners and operators of the golf courses who need the water, with Coastside County Water District and this water district, who are the relevant water districts in the area of the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side. CCWD would be able to and is interested in being a partner in getting recycled water if we can get it produced at the sand plant in Half Moon Bay. Getting that water a relatively short distance across a creek to a place where Ocean Colony partners, the golf course owners and operators. They have pumps and pipeline that go all the way down to the golf courses. We have in mind a very, very clean, very simple, very straightforward project. We would like to get this done in something like 18 months. The cost for something this narrowly constrained should be something achievable and manageable with agency funds from the involved agencies. SAM has the water doesn't have the money to go, to go off and do this whole thing, but CCWD has a need for water supply. The golf courses definitely have a need for water that they can count on day in, day out, and if they can establish contracts that help them know the cost of this water going forward for some number of years, they've got incentive to go ahead and help facilitate this project, which would basically amount to them committing to an annual schedule of payments. If they can commit to pay it, then CCWD and SAM can afford to borrow to fund the construction and the permitting and all that stuff. So that's the nature of what we're looking at right now. The thing that we just got this afternoon is draft, what are we calling it? Think of it as basic principles of how we're all gonna work together and who's gonna do which parts. So we'll be reading that through and talking it over at the next meeting, and then providing our feedback to the SAM committee, which will then go back to the SAM board and have a discussion, make sure that the three agencies are all on the same page with this. And if we're all on the same page with this, then we can go sit down and talk with CCWD to see if they're on the same page with this. And we'll be getting Ocean Colony Partners feedback as well. I think we're at a pretty good place where we've got a pretty clean, pretty direct project to go after, kind of a division of labor and responsibilities. And this is something you don't want to go into too quickly because you're going to live with it for a long time. And so that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that we're all on the same page so we can get this thing going forward and be successful with getting it all done.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, please.
So, just to further review this document, so this is, notice at the top, it says guiding principles. So we took out principles of agreement. And for the meeting when we do discuss this, we'll include this copy, but we'll also include a clean copy with just the principles that we agree to without the actual agreement that the SAM board voted to present to the different boards. And it's divided into phase, it begins with phase one. And phase one is going to be between SAM and CCWD. So in phase one, SAM will recycle the water that it has available coming into the plant. And the water then will be sent to the edge of the SAM property by a pipe. And then at the edge of the SAM property, CCWD will take that water in their pipe, whether it's an existing pipe or a new pipe, will be their concern. And then they will transport it to the golf course to be used for watering the golf course. So that's phase one. And just to be clear, on the bottom of the first page, page 105, it says the purpose of agreement is to set out the basic terms and conditions pursuant to which SAM, CCWD, and MWSD will agree to finance. So there's some things that have to be changed. So for example, in phase one, Montara, SAM is going to do the recycling, transport it to the edge of the property, but then CCWD will be spending money to transport it. So there's some things that we have to change. MWSD is not going to be charged for that aspect of the phase one project. So phase one is just between SAM and CCWD.
It does refer to it later in the document, but anyway, it's being.
Yeah.
There's-
It's vague.
There's
vague.
one of the things the document's trying to do is clear a path for getting this phase one done and leaving open the door to subsequent phases that Montara might want to be directly involved in. And one thing that we wanted to really avoid was any project commitment that would forego any possibility of this agency being able to benefit from recycled water from SAM. And it's not hard to get so fixated on one project that you forget about the downstream effects. So we're kind of planting a flag and saying, look, don't forget we're here. We have representation at the table by having a designated representative board member from this agency and our general manager at the meetings where the water agencies and the SAM committee get together. Even though I'm on the recycled water committee for SAM, I'm trying to wear my SAM hat, and then Dwight shows up and he wears his Montara water hat, and Clement shows up wearing his, well, both hats kind of, but his oversight and management responsibility hat. Trying to make sure that we're keeping our interests clearly in mind and at the table, so that what we come up with is something that we can all agree is a win-win across the board. And I think one of the really interesting things for Montara in going through this with our friends in Half Moon Bay is that we get to spend a lot of time thinking about what would we like to see and how does it get done, and we'll benefit from a lot of the discovery and the thinking and problem solving, so that not only can we leave the door open to it, but it might get us further along because we have given it that time and thought.
So, as Scott just said, phase one is between SAM and the CCWD. Phase two, you know, we're completely open as to how Montara is gonna be involved. Montara may end up sending water back here that's recycled, which is highly unlikely, because it's a long way to have fluids go all the way there, 8 miles, and then come back again. So there are options, or, you know, there's the option that Scott just alluded to, is the fact that fluids may not go up there. Maybe the SAM will do the recycling here. So that, you know, there are a lot of things, a lot of possibilities. So it's completely open for Montara. But I think it's important for recycling to get going, and for SAM to be involved with the community. Phase one is a phase that, through Scott's efforts and the other members of SAM at that time, you know, we got phase one off the ground. Actually, it was working. Recycled water was being sent to the golf course, we just had some problems with who was going to be involved in the process. So we've come a long way. We've really made a great progress here, and again, our role is open. So you know, I think the entire SAM board approved this document. It was voted in support unanimously. So I think it's a good thing to get going for the coast side and for the environment to start recycling water. This is the first step. So we'll look at this at the next meeting, which is what, December what?
November, oh no, our meeting is December 4th.
December 4th.
Yes.
Right, so the next SAM meeting is November 17th, which is early because of Thanksgiving. The other agencies have finally been sent this document. There was a little misunderstanding as to why this document wasn't sent sooner. The other agencies have the document. The city council will be meeting on the 18th, so they'll be meeting the day after SAM's next meeting. So you know, as Scott said, there's no hurry in getting this done. The city council won't meet until after the SAM meeting anyway. So December 4th is the December meeting. Will be fine to look at this document. If the board can agree that make some changes, I know there'll be some changes made, then we can send it back to SAM. I think it's gonna go back to the SAM board. Go directly back to the SAM board, not to the committee.
That's right.
And the SAM board then the SAM board will approve it. Hopefully CCWD will approve it. GSD, City Council, and then our approval, SAM will approve. And then after it's approved, then the next step at the beginning of the year will be for SAM to negotiate a contract in more detail with CCWD. So that'll happen at the beginning of the year if this process continues. SAM and CCWD will get together and negotiate a contract for for recycling the water. And Sam will have control as to how the water's recycled.
I should just mention, I mean, people might be wondering, other than the fact that we're a member agency of SAM, you know, what does Montara care about this, since we're not gonna be receiving the water? It's never gonna even enter our district, for the phase one, but I've asked myself that question a number of times, and it really comes down to this. Half Moon Bay, represents 50% of SAM, and, we know they've been through some really challenging economic situations, and one thing that is really clear is that the golf courses, in partnership with the Ritz, are a prime economic driver of Half Moon Bay, and the city of Half Moon Bay receives a lot of tax revenue and benefit from this. And one of the things that I'll tell anybody here is that the healthier the financial situation in Half Moon Bay, the easier it is for them to be a strong working partner with us, because they don't have to sit there and, you know, chisel away and make cuts at everything. Instead, they can know that they're in a sound position, and they can more readily do the job of paying to fix the things that our constituents, if we do our job right, never see. They don't see all the pipes, or the pumps, or the sand plant. They never see, if we do our job right, they never see spills, or backups, or other unfortunate things. And it's our job to make sure that those things don't happen, and that means we have to spend a lot of money on infrastructure that nobody except our crew ever sees. And if the better off each agency is in their financial situation, the better a partner they can be. And the last thing we need to do is sit around and not try to help out when we've got an opportunity to help out the golf courses, which are such an attractive thing to bring people to the hotel. And between those two, the taxes that they bring to the city, it's something that helps us do our job better, because we've got a partner who's not sitting there like Jack Benny opening his little coin purse and watching the moth fly out, right? Date myself a little bit, but we don't need Jack Benny as a business partner. It was a lot of fun to watch on TV, and I'd like to leave it there.
And then I have a comment.
Yes.
If there are cookies, I think we should agree not to complain about the price, even if we eat them, unlike our poor poverty-stricken partners to the south.
When we have the inauguration of the process, we'll be sure to have cookies. We'll have special cookies, and we'll make sure that everyone partakes and gets to eat one.
Get Half Moon Bay to sign off on the cost on that specific line item ahead of time.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We got a lot of work to do before we
And also,
really kick the project off.
And also, you know, the SAM board has been working really well together on this project, and thanks to Scott and everyone that's involved, and the Half Moon Bay people. There's going to be a change in representation from the city, but we have a good feeling that cooperation will continue. We're not sure who the representatives will be, but hopefully we can keep this process going. Thank you, Scott.
Okay, well, we'll take up the discussion of the language at the next meeting. Let's move on to item 4, review and possible action to adopt resolution of application to San Mateo County Local Agency Formation Commission for amendment to sphere of influence and approval of extraterritorial service for MWSD. We're going after Mars now, so.
Okay, so the first disclaimer, the title asks for approval of a resolution. There's no resolution attached, and the staff recommendation is now revised to review and discuss. This item relates to the Big Wave North Parcel Alternative Project that I'm sure everyone is aware of in this community. The district is listed as the provider for the water service for the project. And the project is currently located outside MWSD's boundaries as defined by the local agency formation commission. And so there is an addendum to first of all, there's an addendum to the final environmental impact report for the NPA scheduled to be considered on November 12th. That's the next step for the Big Wave project. And if the Planning Commission now certifies this addendum and approves the related development entitlements, the next action calls for the Board of Supervisors approval on the county level of the project. And that includes issuance of a coastal development permit, approval of major minor subdivisions, a development agreement with the county, and other documents. Now, since the Big Wave project is located outside the district's boundaries, an amendment to our sphere of influence, another LAFCO term, and approval for extraterritorial service by San Mateo County LAFCO is required. And we were provided a timeline by LAFCO that essentially called for adoption of a resolution at this meeting. The date for the county's planning commission review of the project has been moved back, and I think the entire timeline has slipped now. So we don't have a final estimate. We're preparing for the January 15 meeting. We stand ready to essentially bring this item up with then a resolution for your consideration at the January 15 meeting. So again, the recommendation is to review and discuss. If that is the pleasure of the board, otherwise we'll bring this item up in the future.
Board?
I have a quick question. Who's going to be paying, is Big Wave going to be paying for the expenses of the LAFCO expenses on this?
For the LAFCO expenses, I'm
I'm
not sure.
sorry, yeah, I'm sorry, this is, application to LAFCO for amendment to sphere of influence, so there's going to be charges for this by LAFCO.
Yes, so
So is Big Wave going to be paying for these?
well, in essence, Big Wave has already paid the district actually some upfront cost, and Big Wave will essentially, it's up to negotiation of an agreement with Big Wave what they're ultimately going to pay, but that is going to be included.
But we've got policies on that for a regular homeowner, that if they come in for a water connection, they have, or a sewer connection, they have to cover the engineering costs and other costs.
And
And I want
yes.
to make sure that those same policies
And that is
are
what,
applied equally.
and that is what Big Wave has paid upfront a deposit that we're essentially working down
Okay,
off right now.
Okay, and so these LAFCO charges will be subtracted from that
Yes.
deposit, okay.
Any other questions or comments? So you'll bring this back at a subsequent meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Item 5, review and possible action concerning labor compliance services for Alta Vista Storage Tank Project.
Turns out we have everything in place as is. There's no action on this topic required, so we'd like to pull it.
Okay. Item 6, review and possible action concerning Aqua JPIA Commitment to Excellence Program, and that is the Association of California Water Agencies Joint Powers Insurance Agency.
And this district is a member of this organization, and we recently participated in a voluntary annual workers' compensation risk assessment with the organization. We don't do that only through Aqua JPIA. We also do this, a similar workers' comp risk assessment with actually a private private firm that is hired by the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side, Coastside County Water District, and this district jointly receive safety training and field assessments, site assessments, office assessments of all kinds through that other organization as well. But recently, Aqua JPIA came in, did a similar risk assessment with the organization. And at that meeting, the Aqua representative introduced the Commitment to Excellence program. That's an Aqua program, and that program targets areas that expose members and the insurance pool to the most frequent and highest valued claims. And those are actually at-fault vehicle accidents, driver review qualification standards, infrastructure failures related to deferred preventative maintenance or capital improvement programs, construction-related losses associated with risk transfer and contracting, employment practices claims connected to hiring practice and employee manuals and policies, workers' compensation claims, especially in the areas of ergonomics and personal protective equipment. So members like ourselves are asked to consider supporting and adopting those best practices that reduce losses. Now, we receive support through Aqua and through the other party. So I think we have a good system in place that essentially alerts us to any requirements, anything that we need to change. And it's important to note that members are not required to adopt specific programs or policies as part of their commitment. So what they're essentially asking us is, they provided actually a certificate, even with frame. I don't have the frame here, but it came with frame. So we're supposed to ask you to sign essentially this certificate, this commitment to excellence. We would like to see a signature from each board member and from the general manager. And then we're gonna make a photocopy, send it to Aqua JPIA, and put it up on the wall, and we'll always be reminded when we go through policies that we have actually a commitment to excellence in
So
this
if you can put
regard.
it next to Paul?
So, yes, recommendation is to sign this certificate.
And then authorize you to send a copy to Aqua. correct?
Yes.
Can we have a discussion or a motion?
I think it's a great idea.
Been moved.
I'll second. Wait, Catherine, you motioned it?
Yeah, I made a motion.
I'll
I don't
second.
think we have any disagreement about it being a great idea.
Right.
There's no downside to it, is there?
Well, we have to be responsible, but this is right in line with how we try to do this anyway, so, the more the merrier. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 4-0. Reports, Sewer Authority, Coastside.
So we had our last meeting on October 27th, and we had, the first thing that happened was Rob Hopkins, the general manager, is changing the structure, the upper structure of with Sam. So before, there was the general manager, and under him was Tony Poland, the technical supervisor, technical manager. And Tony had a lot to do. He took care of all aspects of treatment and field operations and collections. And he was extremely, he had too much to do. So Rob decided to change things, and he will stay as general manager, of course, and he'll have two supervisors that'll be, one will be a treatment supervisor and one will be a field operations collection supervisors. So under Rob, they'll be divided into two supervisors, and those will be rotational positions. They'll change back and forth, and those two positions will take all of Tony's work. So to show you how much work responsibility he had, the treatment and field operations supervisors will divide his work. And they will be again rotational to some extent through other people in the operation. The people that work in the operation will be rotational also, will be cross-trained. And the cost of this is just a tiny bit more than what Tony was paid. So to increase the status of these two people, the treatment and field operations supervisors, they'll be getting a little more money than they did before, and it'll end up being more in total than previously, but a very small amount, because Tony will not be there. So these two people will be taking his place. So the board approved that. We all thought that was a great idea. The other thing that happened, of course, is we approved the guidelines for recycled water, and we did some other things like reaffirming the investment policy and guidelines, and we confirmed the salary adjustments for the technical services supervisor and the supervisor for administrative services. So we approved salary adjustments guidelines for all these positions. And so it was a very, very constructive meeting. And then the other thing that happened, the final thing that happened is that we discussed adopting a resolution in support of Proposition 1. And although Proposition 1 would help us, because we could then request funds when the proposition passed, we couldn't. We decided not to make a resolution to support Proposition 1.
But we can still request funds.
But we can still request funds. Thank you, Catherine. That's it. Scott, you want to add anything to that?
No?
Okay.
Thank you, Jim. Midcoast Community Council meeting.
I have not been paying much attention to Midcoast Community Council, but we have in our audience a Midcoast Community Council member, Dave Olson. And Dave, would you mind stepping to the microphone? It would be a great pleasure.
Sure. Trying to remember all the things we've been going over. Big Wave has certainly been a item on the agenda a number of times. We're having another meeting on Monday to draft yet another letter on that. As I'm sure you know, the project has changed major ways multiple times in the last couple of months.
And did I hear or not? I think I heard that design review voted 2-1 not to.
That is correct. The design review voted against, partly because the changes made the scale so massive. So the Big Wave partners have redesigned yet again.
So is it getting bigger or smaller?
They collapsed all the wellness buildings into one massive 300 by 200 foot building, and they collapsed the 5 office buildings into 3 in the several weeks before the design review. And apparently after the design review turned that down, and before the Planning Commission meeting on November 12th, which will be at the GSD offices, they are doing yet another
Wait a minute,
redesign.
it's gonna be at Granada Sanitary
Yes,
District?
5 o'clock,
How
November
are they
12th.
going to cram everyone in there?
The same way we
Careful.
crammed everyone in there when we talked about the Moss Beach Park.
That's right.
Yes,
It's not gonna happen.
hopefully it won't be quite that many.
Can I make a correction? It's not Granada Sanitary District anymore, it's Granada.
Yeah, it's now
Community
Granada.
Service District.
Yes, sorry.
So I think we all need to get used to
Yes, we do need to get used to
Well,
that.
except the sign hasn't been changed.
G.
Yes, it will.
G's,
And then
GSD.
Princeton Plan has been discussed a number of times recently. And the Coastal Connection Transportation Plan, which, if you haven't looked at it, has a fairly significant document describing build-out assumptions and what that would mean for water and transportation and everything else. I'm assuming quite a bit of the data came from MWSD as well as the other water districts. But their assumption was maximum build-out irrespective of water, to see what the worst case for transportation would be. So those have all been presented. They're on the MWSD website.
No,
The MCC website. Yes.
you know, we should, but thank you, we should maybe put a link between the two from our website to the documents website. I think that might be a good plan.
Yeah, it would probably be a good idea. And if you haven't visited the MCC website, Lisa now has all of the MCC documents going back to its formation are on the website. So quite a bit of stuff there.
You left out the erosion and surface beach.
Thank you. Yes, the Surfers Beach emergency repair had a presentation at the last meeting. And the two leading proposals are a riprap and I forget the technical name of the design, but it's basically a post and wall system. The engine, and this is a temporary repair pending the Corps of Engineers deciding what, if anything, to do about the seawall and sand replenishment. So this is expected to last in the 5 to 7 year range until a real plan is done. The engineers there did not expect a wall system to be effective for any reasonable amount of money. So they have a strong preference for a riprap system, and they acknowledge that will move the problem further down the bluff, but further down the bluff is only open space, it's not the highway.
So it's not their
Only
problem.
open space.
They acknowledge it. They say that any scheme that they can foresee which will save the highway from being eroded will in fact cause further bluff erosion. They don't see any way around that short of major sand replenishment. So
The whole spiral shape of the erosion, I learned about this in high school physics.
yeah.
It baffles me that the obvious solution is so hard for them to find.
And that was in Texas.
That was in Texas.
Well,
But all you have to do is look at the Gulf of
Yes,
Mexico.
and
you get
and
some
on the
idea.
East Coast and pretty much anywhere else you want to look.
Could you remind us of the
But
obvious
the
solution?
Corps of
Well,
Engineers is now,
the sand replenishment can't happen unless you let the sand through. The sand comes from the creeks, which is carried down from the hills.
Okay.
The hills which are full of granite, and it decomposes and washes down through the creeks and replenishes the beach. And you can see that very nicely here at Montara State Beach. That's how that works. And if you bottle it all up, within hundreds of feet of this, people are talking about having to dredge because something is filling up with sand. And when you put in a structure like a seawall, the wave energy is reflected. But basically, coming off of the point at the very tip of Half Moon Bay, you're going to get the spiral shape, and it's going to go wherever it can get, and whatever erodes to make that shape. And if you try to fight that, the ocean's always going to win. And sooner or later, someone's going to talk about punching a hole in the seawall, probably putting some kind of bridge across it so people can still get out there and fish and do the other things. But it's that would let sand through. It would change the dynamics of where all that wave energy goes. It's interesting to watch this. I wish them well at actually getting out a wave tank and playing with the model. There are wave tank simulators online that you can do in web browsers. You can play with shapes, and
Yeah.
you know, this is probably the most interesting part of my high school physics course was all of the wave tank videos. We didn't actually have wave tanks; we couldn't afford those, but we had videos, and we saw all these amazing things. And it's like, yeah, that was like in the third well, they weren't videos; they were films. That was really handy with
Ooh.
the projector and the films.
That and Jack Benny, huh?
Yeah, but it's basic physics. All right, well, let's.
Well, we
so
wouldn't
the
do-
only other item
What
that
does
came
that
up,
have to do with bureaucracy?
yeah, so
Or Caltrans.
the only other item
the
that came up
bridge.
at that was Corps of Engineers has now finally said they see an end in sight to all their studies and They do not think that breaching the seawall is a viable possibility.
Well, it'll be
But
interesting
we'll
to
see when the
report.
final report comes out.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave. We look forward to having you at all our meetings.
CSDA report. Kathy.
We did not have a meeting because it was the 6th game of the World Series.
Okay. CCWD and CCWD committee reports. Nothing to report.
Nothing.
Attorney's report.
Just for information, Mr. Chairman, I will not be available to attend the December 4th meeting.
Okay. Director's reports. General manager's report.
Nothing to add.
Future agendas.
Oh,
Here,
yeah, I have one thing, and that is,
in the home stretch.
if, we'll let the board know if there's a need for a second meeting, this month.
Okay.
So
That would be
plan to
on-
cancel,
Let me see,
Okay,
that
so
would be
the
on
plan is to
Thanksgiving?
cancel the meeting on November 20th?
yes.
To
Unless-
not have a
unless
meeting
there's-
for anticipation of failure to have quorum or some such phrase. All right, future agendas adjournment, hearing no objection, we are adjourned at 8:57:57.
Woo-hoo!
All right.
Dave, please come to every meeting. This is the earliest we've gotten out.
Yeah, I'll try. It's on my calendar. It's a matter of.
And we
But thank you for
have-
coming.